Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Miranda Dold, and on behalf of the Goldstone Caregiver Center and Faith Community Nurse Programs, I'd like to welcome you to today's presentation by Dr. Marc Borenstein on Renewal for Caregivers, From Burnout to Bonfire. Dr. Borenstein has over 40 years experience as an emergency medicine clinician and over 30 years experience in emergency medicine teaching and education. He is the founding program director for the New Vance Health Vassar Brothers Medical Center residency in emergency medicine. As a program director, Dr. Borenstein has an unequaled track record in academic emergency medicine of having established, restored, and stabilized ACGME accreditation for 8 emergency medicine residency training programs in the Northeast and Florida. Dr. Borenstein has an impressive history of membership in prestigious medical and academic organizations as well. Dr. Borenstein has held the academic rank of professor at 5 medical schools: New York College of Osteopathic Medicine, University of Medicine and Dentistry, New Jersey, University of Florida College of Medicine, University of Missouri School of Medicine, and Touro University College of Medicine. Dr. Borenstein has dedicated his career in medicine to building academic departments of emergency medicine that exemplify clinical excellence, humanistic values, diversity, a patient and family-centered experience, and the dignity of the human spirit. He has a lifelong passion for and commitment to teaching, continuous learning, faculty renewal, and the utilization of effective communication in medicine to create exceptional teamwork, reduce medical error, and enhance patient safety. I don't want to shortchange Dr. Borenstein and his impressive career, so I did paste his entire bio in the chat. But we welcome you, Dr. Borenstein, and are so happy to have you with us. Thank you for doing this invaluable presentation.
Thank you very much for that kind and generous introduction. It's really an honor and a pleasure for me to be here today. And if my parents were alive, they would have been very happy to have heard all of that because sometimes I wonder, who is that person? Is that really me? Because like many people, I have a little bit of that in the background, wondering if I'm, doing enough. But thank you. So, I would like to start by saying this. Thank you. I would like to thank each and every one of you who's on this program today. But I'd like to extend that thank you to everyone who's going to see it, or even for people who aren't going to be part of this presentation, because each and every one of you in your lives as caregivers are contributing to the lives of others. And it's so generous of spirit and so loving what you do and the difference that you make in the world. And collectively around the country and around the world, what you are doing is invaluable and incalculable in terms of the impact that it makes. And when I was preparing for this talk, I started by giving this talk primarily to physicians and residents and extended it out to caregivers. So I did more reading to learn just what you do and the difference that it makes. So thank you, not just for being here, but for being in the world and doing what you do. It's deeply appreciated by many, some who may not be able to express fully the appreciation. So I'm going to take a little bit of license and on their behalf, express it here and now for you. Thank you. Now, the objectives in this talk, we want to identify signs and symptoms of burnout and develop an ability to monitor it ongoing, to identify it early. And then what I would like to do is facilitate creating empowering context and vision, define what that is, and help people create a personal mission statement that expresses really the joy and the passion of what it is that you do, to apply it in an area of life where that would be particularly important in creating a renewed source of spirit and energy. Well, caregiver burnout, which can apply to all of those in the healthcare field, those who are doing that professionally as their work, but all who are doing this out of the spirit of their love to provide care for others, often not paid. It's a kind of emotional exhaustion, a sense of depersonalization, a disconnect from the work or the care that you're giving, and a feeling that it doesn't matter or it's not making a difference. The satisfaction that one might derive from this work is lost. And it can affect relationships at work or at home, or in providing care to a loved one in a negative way. Compassion fatigue can set in, where one is just almost too tired to care for the next person or to care on the next day. It just looks overwhelming and exhausting. And at times there can be a deterioration of the very values and the spirit that has one take on being a caregiver in the first place. And perhaps particularly painful, it can be experienced in silence and isolation, because sometimes we don't speak up and share what we're going through with others. And it may feel like our personal experience is very isolated, when in fact, many of us are experiencing the same feelings and the same things. Now, generally speaking, the burnout has been reported in 20 to 30, 40% of those who are working in the healthcare professions, and amongst unpaid caregivers, around 20, 25% often report burnout, sometimes 30%, depending on what you read. But this slide is to emphasize that the pandemic over the past 2.5 years has increased that burnout to 50 to 60%. And I would estimate, in my own anecdotal experience, even higher than that. And that's true amongst all areas of healthcare professionals and for those who provide care to others, to loved ones. One study done by the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving surveyed 400 caregivers across 46 states. 83% reported increased stress over the baseline of what they were already dealing with. There was notably worsening anxiety and depression, and the pandemic had adversely affected the ability to have support from family and friends, isolating people where they couldn't travel, they couldn't be in the home of another person. So it made caregiving especially difficult in the past 2.5 years. In addition, the gerontologist just last year published also finding increases in anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances and fatigue were noted, and financial stress, both from the costs associated with caregiving, but lost wages and earnings associated with not being able to work, or having certain areas of the workforce decrease. Certain job markets were very adversely hit by the pandemic, creating great financial stress for many people. The Family Caregiver Alliance noted these findings. And what struck me here was the increased stress, particularly when one is caring for a family member, particularly a parent or a spouse, and also when living together. And you can see the difference at 52% versus 18% residing together or living separately. So it's very difficult, again, increased by the pandemic, when you consider that travel was not possible in some cases in the last couple of years, creating isolation, increased isolation. The AARP noted that in these areas for non-paid caregivers, Stresses were physical. The physical requirements of caregiving can be extremely difficult and can be difficult on those who might already have some physical impairments. So if you have a low back pain, or maybe you've had low back surgery or disc trouble, and now there's a component of lifting associated with caregiving that can add a significant physical stress. And then the emotional stress that we've pointed to that can occur with burnout, where there's just the giving of one's emotions in a setting where someone you love isn't functioning well or deteriorating. And 50% in this particular AARP review felt they really had no choice in the matter. And yet, when one looks at overall the caregivers who are not paid, taking care of loved ones, 80% feel it is absolutely worth it, and it's something they would do, even if they felt they didn't have choice in the matter. What are some of the adverse effects that can occur? Well, we mentioned depression and anxiety can worsen or occur. There's difficulty maintaining a healthy lifestyle, getting out and having time for yourself to be able to take a walk or do exercise of some sort or engage in a sport. I spoke to an economic stress, loss of wages, work, inability to maintain one's own personal healthcare needs. Taking yourself to the doctor might be challenging to set up an appointment, or maybe one is putting off that test that was important that might require time and preparation, like a colonoscopy, for example, where you have to prepare yourself and then take a day off, and you need somebody to come with you or take you home. You might not be able to do that, or you postpone necessary care of that nature. Now, there's some triggers that can make things accelerate and actually worsen quickly, such as loss of family or other caregiver support, again, accelerated in the pandemic, falls by the person that you're taking care of, an inability to ambulate, again, creating physical needs that the caregiver might not be able to fulfill alone. Bowel incontinence can be very difficult just from the issues of cleaning and the challenges that are needed to take care of the person, to turn them, to move them, the physical challenges. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 people, and that may not be available in a caregiver setting. There's an overwhelming feeling of just having to do it all and not being able to, including taking care of yourself. Other triggers can be financial burdens, loss of finances to provide some of the care that is costly, and then progression of dementia, which can lead to anger outbursts, physical violence, loss of language and communication in dementia, inability to participate in basic self-care, a loss of recognition by the person with dementia of the loved one. My older sister, was the caregiver for my brother-in-law, who developed an early onset of dementia. It was not Alzheimer's, it was a different type called primary progressive aphasia, with a loss of all language skills. She did everything she possibly could, but there was a point where, with certain anger outbursts and confrontative behavior, and just the needs that were progressing, finding supportive care in another setting was very challenging, and somewhat also with guilt, where one feels like, this is the person you love that you've been with for decades in her case, and then having to give that care over to others was very challenging and very difficult. There may not be insufficient training. There may be insufficient training to provide healthcare needs. Some of these skills that you need require an understanding, even something as basic as lifting and turning a patient, such that you don't injure yourself, actually requires skill sets. Responsibility for another's health and life, including in some cases financial aspects, legal guardianship or healthcare proxy, things of this nature, And sometimes the caregiver may not have sufficient information regarding their loved one's medical condition. It can occur that we feel empathetic to the detriment of our own needs. Again, not getting that healthcare appointment that the caregiver needs. And then many of us repress or make secondary our emotions and have them less important when in fact they're very important. And you know, I remember being told once of a story of or a picture of a caregiver was like a tree bearing fruit, and that fruit makes a difference for the life of others. But if the tree roots are not strong and the tree has not received the sunshine and the watering to bear fruit, then there is no fruit for others. And it's so important that we pay attention to those needs that we have that are the roots and the sunshine that make a difference in our own growth and development and keeping us strong in that way. Some of the consequences of burnout: guilt, sometimes shame if you can't get it done or don't do it as well as you think you could, sometimes blame oneself or others. An actual clinical depression can set in, inconsistencies can occur, or there might be errors or incomplete care providing. In more severe situations, alcohol abuse or substance abuse can occur and actually worsen to addictive disorder. Inability to maintain household needs, addictive disorder, partner or relationship stresses for the caregiver, even separation or divorce where there might be a marriage or a partnership. Boundary violations or disruptive behavior could occur. Anger and resentment towards the loved one, or decreased effectiveness and productivity in other areas of the caregiver's life and work. So how do we go from those sobering aspects of caregiving to more of a bonfire and a resiliency that we can maintain over time? I think part of this is recognition and change before the fire is gone. From what I have seen of burnout over maybe the last 20 or 30 years that I've been looking at this, is that unaddressed, it's progressive, like other illnesses. You know, if you have high blood pressure and you don't treat it, at first, it may have little or no symptoms at all. High blood pressure at one time was called the silent killer because people had it and they weren't feeling anything, but it was creating stress on your heart, your blood vessels, your kidneys. And all of a sudden, the first manifestation of high blood pressure was a heart attack or a stroke. So unaddressed over time, high blood pressure causes other illness. And I believe with burnout, if it's not identified early, it leads to conditions that are much more difficult to turn around. So we want to identify those signs and symptoms early. You know, the presence of cynicism and resignation. And what I'm referring to here is more than a passing like everybody has a moment a day where you're angry, you're frustrated, you're upset. We all have that. But when it starts to become more prevalent, more often, daily, or occurs out of proportion to the situation. So in other words, there's a relatively small thing that has happened and there's a big upset that occurs. I noticed that after working a shift in emergency medicine, when I have fatigue and I'm coming back home, the smallest little things get on my nerves, push my button. But you know what? When I'm having a day off and I haven't had the stress and the fatigue and I'm caught up with my sleep, I'm like, it's a bit like Teflon. You know, these little things, they just don't get to me, but they do when I'm coming off a shift. And I have to notice that and even let people know so that when I come home, I say, you know, I'm just not ready yet. I need some time, an hour to just get past everything I've been through so that I can be present for you. There's a feeling of isolation that can occur, but again, when it's more progressive or apathy, kind of emotion, these are early signs that need to be recognized. The kind of boredom, a monotony, there's no sense of connection to the purpose of what's going on. Hobbies may not be enjoyable. Things that you used to like are becoming unimportant. No sense of humor. Have you ever noticed when you're like tired, you're fatigued, things are getting to you? There's just no sense of humor about, those little things that are kind of funny when you're feeling, generally pretty good, and you can have a little sense of humor even about yourself, where you can be a little self-deprecating. And it's hard to do that when these kinds of stresses are occurring. And it's not just the fatigue that occurs that one day when one is having, like me, a long shift in the emergency department, but it's an ongoing fatigue. It's very difficult to overcome with new or increased physical symptoms, negative attitudes towards self or others. In a setting where you have a healthcare professional where they're coming to work, it could be a new pattern of lateness or not completing care needs, and that can occur for unpaid caregivers as well. Difficulty focusing or increased arguments over small things, frustrations over little things, all of these kinds of things, risk-taking behavior. Self-medication, now this would be more pertinent to particularly physicians who have the ability to prescribe medication, including to themselves. So when you're starting to prescribe medications to yourself in these areas, it's a very slippery slope down to addictive disorder and other very serious consequences. Sleep difficulties, difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep, increased new physical symptoms. I mentioned in anger and resentment, sometimes over family, towards yourself, the person, the loved one. So how can we identify this, what we've just talked about, in a way to get some sense of asking a question? Is this occurring for me? Are there some questions I can ask? Now, I adapted this from a book that was looking at what was important to people in the workplace across 50, 60,000 people of all different professions that were surveyed through people that used to be with the Gallup organization. And these questions I've adapted. And as a caregiver, they're valuable to ask yourself and to say where yes is a 5, a strong 5, 1 is a strong no, but to take a look at it and to say, do I know what is expected of me as a caregiver? Like, am I clear about what the caregiving needs are? What is the information that I need? Do I know what's expected of me? Do I have the materials and equipment I need to provide caregiving in the best way? What could I do if I don't? Are other caregivers on the team? In some settings, we have a team of caregivers. Are they committed to providing excellent care? Can you answer that strongly or not? In the past 7 days, have I received recognition or praise for providing good care? Why is that important? Because acknowledgement, it's that water in the sun that I was referring to the tree or plant. It's pretty hard to grow in the absence of sunlight and water when you're a plant. And you know what? It's pretty hard to grow when you're a human being and you don't get any acknowledgement anywhere. Not only for the good work that you're doing, but for who you are. And so that's why, is there someone where I provide care who seems to care about me as a person? Is there someone where I provide care I can relate to and talk to? So is there someone in your life where you could connect and speak to and share about life and about what's going on in life? Is there someone who encourages me to be active in my life outside of caregiving? So is there that person I can turn to? A friend, a family member, clergy, spiritual support, someone who you could turn to who's going to encourage you to get out and maybe get past some feelings of guilt for taking care of yourself. In providing care, do my opinions seem to count? I mean, especially if you are responsible for another person's care. Your input matters. Are people listening to what you have to say? When you're a family member and you don't feel heard, I've seen this as an emergency physician for the entirety of my career, to listen to the family members, even when I think I have the right idea, and I go in and I'm, about to discharge a patient and tell them this is what I think and that is what I think, and the patient can go home. And I notice, the one or two people are looking at me like they don't seem to be on board with what I'm saying. And rather than then the natural tendency, especially if you're a doctor and you think, hey, I'm a doctor, I'm trained for this, the natural tendency is to redouble your effort to convince people of your plan. But I learned that it's much more humble and appropriate to say, I notice you don't seem to be on board with what I'm saying. What concerns do you have, or what questions do you have? Are you seeing something? Please let me know what you are seeing that I might be missing. Oh my God, what a difference! What a difference! All of a sudden, it's like, you know what? Maybe your dad with chest pain, it might be better to watch overnight in the emergency department. Maybe there's something here I'm missing. One time, the patient's mom said to me, I think she has gallbladder disease. Her aunt had something like this. Now, I didn't think she was having gallbladder disease. I thought it was maybe a stomach, gastritis, which is like an upset stomach kind of thing. And I said, well, maybe we should get an ultrasound exam. And we did. Guess what she had? Gallbladder disease. Moms know. Listen to moms. That's something I picked up on as a physician. But your opinions, it's so important. And again, is there a mission or a purpose for the care that you provide that makes me feel not only what I am doing makes a difference, but it's the right thing to do? So how can we make some changes or do things before the fire is gone? We've just talked about monitoring. Let's say we've started to pick up on there's early signs of burnout. We're feeling it. What's next? How do we address that? Well, we can make some caregiver role modification or personal life changes, and especially don't go it alone. When you start to notice something is there, get help. Here's some modifications that can be made. I know it may not be possible in some circumstances, and the pandemic made it worse, but if and when it's possible, family or friends may be able to help, or they may be able to help in ways that you didn't initially think of, not so much with providing the actual care to the loved one. Maybe they're not available for that, but maybe there's something they can do to help you get the care you need. Sometimes when things are a bit more severe, a therapist, a counselor, a clergy, so spiritual, if it's someone that's important in your life that could help you sort out some of the feelings and particularly identify if you might need more professional medical attention, including with your own physical health as well as mental health. If financially feasible, and I understand, that may not always be possible, but if financially feasible, home health aid, or sometimes being sure you understand what is available through the insurance policies that exist to be sure you're getting the help that you can. And then sometimes, and it may feel selfish, but if you're starting to go into burnout, you have to, again, think of the tree with the fruit. You've got to water the tree, set boundaries on limits on what you can and cannot do. There may be community service that haven't been fully explored, adult daycare, home meal delivery, visiting nurses. There may be others, but think about places where you may have community resources that haven't been identified. Surveillance technology can be helpful. What do I mean by that? That's like all the video and the cameras. There's a lot available now that doesn't require professional installation. It used to be you would have to spend a fair amount of money, but now you can find small cameras that can be put up, and nanny cams, they're sometimes called, or other devices, and things can be connected to your phone. So if you're not there, there's a lot of alert systems. So be sure you know what might be out there in the IT marketplace to help yourself. There's communication technology now. Maybe it's hard to reach all the family members that you want to reach and the friends, and you don't have time to make many calls. But if you use something like Caring Bridge, which is free, these are free technologies that are available. You can just do an internet search and find Caring Bridge or My Lifeline. Use social medias that are well known, like Instagram and Facebook and others, but you can actually get information out there to everybody, post messages in a way that allows everybody to be up to date without the kind of time factor that you may not have. Sometimes home modifications aren't always thought of, but very important. Some of which I know can be expensive, may not be feasible, but other smaller things. If you speak to a geriatric physician, you will discover that there's a lot of things that can be done to assist an older person in their self-care by modifying how they use, like just even something like a jar opener that, your strength is limited. There are ways to address this through home and technical modifications. It's so important to add physical activity and sports. And again, you may have to make the time. Once you identify burnout is setting in, these modifications are incredibly important. And it's so easy to turn to fast food or quick frozen food that may not have nutritional value. Nutrition is important. Again, water the tree, what you put in to your body. I, as a physician, have, this has become one of the most important things to me in preventative care, is the quality of the nutrition, the food that goes into your body. And it makes a big difference in your overall care. You may have to get some short getaways, maybe again, try to find some way to just take a breather. Look, even if it's an afternoon or a day, if you can't put together a vacation. And then time away from caregiving with people that you love to be with, or places, again, with short getaway where it's restorative for you. Could be a museum. It could be somewhere like the Cloisters in New York City, someplace that is uplifting to you. Could be something, a walk in a nature trail. It could be music, maybe listening to music. If you don't have a hobby, get a hobby. But if you have one, take a little time for it. Mindfulness, spirituality, finding the miraculous in the small. And when I turn on the shower in the morning and warm water comes out, I take a moment to, I take a moment to thank God, and just the spiritual, the blessing that I can't believe warm water is coming out of a faucet when I turn this, and just in that moment, the universe is present for me. The spirituality of at any given moment, you can capture it. Now, for me, and I'm going to share this with you, I've turned to to writing poetry, and I've started doing that to find a way to express some of the feelings that I have. So I'm going to go ahead and share this, because you may want to journal or write as a way to bring this forward for yourself as well. So here's a poem entitled Pandemic, of course, written in the pandemic. The value of the human touch as a power for healing lies suspended between us in our pandemic of fears and needs to embrace again someday. The search is on. Where is the warmth that lies beneath? That lies behind the masks we wear? Is it here? Was it there before the race began? Science cries for solutions to human distance. Where are we going? Should we stay? Is safety just 6 feet away, or under the ground, around the corner, on the blind side, in the secret place, and under his shadow, if we walk by faith? And for some who might recognize, that was inspired a bit by Psalm 91. Call route. And this reflects even going back to my early days as an intern and resident, but throughout my career. 4 a.m., your breath disturbs me now, in bed, in search of peace of mind. What will it take to let go to know I am not in control of what happened anyway, beyond my grasp and understanding of why you passed. You passed through my hands at work to save you, pounding, crashing, waves gone flat, shocks and jewels didn't bring you back to me. I'm left behind, naked, bare, down to the bone, with nothing left but to carry on to the next one in pain. I am your doctor. What brings you here, near and close to my soul that screams to say, I'm tired, tired of losing another to you, who I fought with my most powerful drugs and machines and still lose to you, the eternal, who never sleeps and always arrives on time. Now, I want to go into and spend the remainder of our talk on creating context and vision and using this to make a difference in our lives. What is purposeful context? Well, it creates meaning and purpose in what you are doing. And I'm going to illustrate that with the story of the stonecutters. So this is a story, I don't even remember where I heard this from, but think back, I don't know, into the medieval days, the Renaissance days, hundreds of years ago. There's this man walking down the road and he sees a man with a big like sledgehammer, and the man is hitting a large granite rock, big hunk of rock, and he looks frustrated and upset and just angry almost. And the man says, oh, what are you doing? He turns to him and scowls a little bit and he says, can't you see I'm breaking rocks? He said, oh, okay. And he walks a little further. This man walks a little further down the road and he sees another man. Now, to the eye, to the observer, this man seems to be doing the same thing. He's got a hammer, it looks like the same kind of hammer, big sledgehammer, same big piece of rock. But this guy, he looks energetic. He looks kind of, in a way, almost uplifted. He seems like happy. And he goes up to me and says, what are you doing? And that man says, well, just look down the road there a little bit further. He said, I'm building a cathedral. So there you have it. You've got two men with large sledgehammers breaking rocks. One of them is created and is connected to the cathedral that's being built that will have a lasting impact for hundreds of years to come. And is a legacy, a spiritual monument. And the other is breaking rocks. But here's the thing, in life, they're both breaking rocks. So I would say, is there a place in life where you might feel like you're breaking rocks? And is there perhaps a connection that you could make that creates context? Because, you know, sometimes when I'm working in an emergency department, and I don't just mean here, I mean wherever I've been in my career, there's all kinds of things that are frustrating. I can't find the otoscope to look in your ear. The light bulb burnt out on the ophthalmoscope. The computer printer isn't working. I can't find a chair. For some reason, the chair isn't there. All of these things are happening. But if I was to let that give me, like, inform who I'm going to be, I would be frustrated, upset. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't work to figure out how to get the otoscopes to work when they're not working, but in the moment, I'm a doctor taking care of a human being. I'm not an otoscope that doesn't work. So in the moment, what's going to grant me being, is going to be the context that I create. So what is vision and how's that connected? Well, it's something you create in language that's future-based. It's not about what you're doing now. It's what you're working towards creating. It's actually not predicted by the past. In fact, the past often argues against it. For every great accomplishment, every barrier that was broken, many people said it was impossible, including very smart, talented, learned people with education. You know, it was actually said in the early 1900s by smart physiologists that it was impossible for a human being to run a mile under 4 minutes, physically impossible. It's called the 4-minute barrier. And people that studied the human body, scientists, said the human body is not built in a way that you could run a mile in less than 4 minutes. And so nobody was able to do that until the early 1950s. Now, here's the kind of funny thing. It was another scientist, a physician, who ran the mile in under 4 minutes, Dr. Roger Bannister. Do you know what happened after he broke the 4-minute barrier? And mind you, he only broke it by about a second. He ran in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. Guess what happened over the next year? A whole bunch of people started running the mile under 4 minutes. And my son, I told him that story, and my son said to me, he's just graduated college recently. He said, "Dad, you might not know this, but there's over 90 people right now in college who can run the mile in less than 4 minutes right now in college." I said, "Wow, that's amazing." So that's vision for seeing something possible, not defined by how things are currently. And it's exciting. It's inclusive. I have a vision for world peace. Actually, right now, that doesn't look possible. And there's a lot of evidence to say it is impossible. But you could still take a stand for having a vision for world peace. It's possible. I have a vision for an emergency department being a place of well-being for the people that work there. I don't think we got there yet, but we're working hard to make it possible. A bold statement is also something you can create, a nonlinear future created by a statement that breaks with the past, communicates clearly. Here's some bold statements that occurred by businesses. They use them. And also the government, NASA, landing a man on the moon. Everybody who worked at NASA in the 1960s knew that they were going to land a man on the moon. Coca-Cola, it's the real thing. I'd like to buy a world of Coke. Here's an interesting one. This is the bold statement for Google. Organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. That's a pretty big, bold statement. Okay, so right now, I would like you to pick an area of your life where you are possibly putting up with something, an area that might look hopeless, maybe where you feel stuck or trapped. This isn't going to change. Pick an area right now. Think of something where it's important, something important in your life. It might look like it's that, you know how it's like, it's always him, it's always her, it's them, not me. If they would just communicate differently, everything would be great. Maybe it's somebody you used to care about, actually is important to you, but you've lost that affinity. There's no sense of humor about it, and it's very significant. So you don't want to hear any advice in that area. Pick that area. Let's invent some context right now and a vision, a bold statement. How do we do that? Well, I want you to pick 1 or 2 or 3 words that matter to you. Now, I'm showing you a purposeful context that I created for me as a physician, because dignity, compassion, and well-being matter to me as a physician. It's partly why I went into medicine, for well-being of others, and compassion for people. And then you just turn it into a sentence to provide dignity, compassion, and enhance the well-being of each and every person. Now that's something worth getting up for in the morning and coming to work for. If I were to define myself solely as an emergency physician based on the medical definition of an emergency, do you know many people that I see in the emergency department would not qualify for that definition? They wouldn't be, quote, emergencies. And guess what attitude that leads to? What are you doing here? Why did that person come to the emergency department? You know, why are they here? Well, how much enjoyment are you going to get out of your work thinking that people that are showing up are the wrong people? And imagine there's almost a bit of a kind of an arrogance, like, oh, those people aren't worthy of my, wonderful emergency medicine skills that took years to develop. Can you imagine? A physician, I took my oath to help people, all people, everybody. Not everybody needs to have some, high-skilled airway management where they can't breathe. Maybe somebody needs a kind word, a human touch. Maybe they just need help to get to the right place where their care could be provided more effectively than me. There's always something that can be done when my mission, my vision is to enhance the well-being of each and every person. Now, again, pick 2 or 3 words. Here's another one: to honor the dignity of the human spirit and have people leave an experience of being valued. I just made that up. I took three things that matter to me: the human spirit, dignity, being valued. You can change them. You don't have to keep them. Make one and change it 6 months from now. Throw it away, get another. Very easy to put one together. Think of something you care about, you're passionate about, and just put it into a sentence. And then start to make it you. Who I am is the possibility of well-being for people. I just made that up just now. Who I am is the possibility of well-being for people. Try that on. Say who I am is the possibility of whatever's right for you. Here's another one in my role as an emergency department director: building a workplace that is a healing environment that enhances the well-being of people. Because years ago, I would hear people sometimes say, I've just got to survive this shift. You know, like a nurse would come in and say, I just have to survive this shift. And I was thinking, you know, people spend, I don't know, it's estimated like 40% of your life at work. I mean, if you're not counting sleeping, and then you've got 8 hours a day for 40 hours a week or more for some people, you got a big percentage of your life is at work. And I thought, well, what if being at work actually enhanced your well-being instead of reduced it? Because some people were coming to work and it's just about survival. And I thought, could you imagine coming to work, actually were feeling bad in the morning when you got up about whatever, and you got to work and you started to feel better? Wow, what kind of environment would that be? Do you know, actually, when I got up today and drove to work, this is like, no kidding. I was really tired. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I don't know, maybe I'm not recovered from my shift on the Monday. I don't really know. I was kind of falling asleep practically in conference. I was thinking, how am I going to give this lecture? I don't know where I'm going to get the energy. But what happened when that screen turned on and I saw you, I remembered that who I am is not the feelings of being tired. Who I am is building a healing workplace for people. Who I am is supporting others. I'm actually about enhancing the well-being of people and have each and every person leave an experience of value. That's what I have memorized, because I like burned it into me, to have each and every person leave an experience of value. And I am committed you get value out of the time you took to be here today with me. And all of a sudden I woke up. I like woke up and I said, you know, I'm feeling really pretty good in this talk today. I feel a lot more alive than I was 2 hours ago. It's possible to create that through purposeful context. But then once you do that, you have to keep it alive. You can't just think it in your head. And you've got to write it down, create a bold statement, put it on your refrigerator, tell somebody. Because when you tell somebody, they'll remember it. You know how like those New Year's resolutions you make that you can forget about because you never told anybody? When you tell somebody, they'll remember it when you forget. When you write it on the refrigerator, it'll be there the next day when you get up, because if it's just in your mind, it disappears. It's only real when you start to bring it out in the world and share it. And that's why when I like to give this lecture, because it reminds me who I am when I don't remember, which I sometimes don't, but saying it right now helps me to remember that. And here it is to enhance, that's what I just said. Remember, here it is to enhance the well-being and have each and every person leave an experience of being valued. Here's another one you can make up. Provide the finest quality care, have each and every person leave an experience of being valued. Here's some of my bold statements. Putting Nuvance on the map of academic emergency medicine. What am I doing as a program director? I'm building a program that will leave a legacy for the Mid-Hudson Valley and beyond for generations to come. That's something that inspires me. So when I come to work, I realize I'm leaving a legacy. When you provide care for another human being, you are leaving a legacy by example, by action, deed, and commitment. You are leaving a legacy and inspiring others about what is possible in the world to heal other people from love. It's extraordinary what you're doing, even when you don't realize you're doing it. Partners in Parenting, I created that with my ex-wife. We have a daughter. This goes back like 30 years ago when she was like little. We got divorced. That wasn't a very pleasant experience for anybody. But you know what? I began to think about it. How could I create something that going forward would make a difference in our daughter's life? Not what is about me or my complaints or this should have been what, who cares about that? Partners in Parenting was to create a life for our daughter that could occur even if we weren't married. And we did that. And she's in her 30s now. And I had to put some stuff aside to do that, like some opinions that didn't support the life I wanted for her. So I'm going to close with a quote from Mother Teresa that I really love. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. And the final analysis is between you and God. It was never, excuse me, sorry. It was never between you and them anyway. And on that note, I'm going to close my talk.
Dr. Borenstein, thank you. You have created an incredibly healing space in this past hour with great support. And you absolutely, I think I speak for the many on this program that you are leaving everyone with an experience of feeling incredibly valued. I have received so many comments throughout this whole program about how much you have touched everyone. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you on behalf of all of us. I know we have a couple of minutes. I didn't know if anyone has any questions, any comments in the remaining moments.
I just want to thank you a lot. I really learned, and very nice words, kind words, very motivational speaker. Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you as well. And it was very inspirational for me. I've been a caregiver, I should say, that's a Freudian slip, for 6 years. And it is a real challenge. And what you said brought a lot of hope and inspiration to me. And I'm just grateful to hear that in such a succinct way. And just want to say thank you. I appreciate your heartfelt compassion for us and
Thank you.
dealing with. Thank you.
And I just tag on to that. I work as a facilitator for a men's support group of caregivers, and this is so incredibly helpful. I also have a sister who's going through this. When would this tape be available so that we might share it even more broadly on the way we've talked about? Because it is incredible. It's very good.
I would say probably in the next week or so.
Great.
In the next week.
Thank you.
Please share it. I
Just
think
a
that
quick
this
question.
message can have such a ripple effect. Ryan, what were you going to say?
I was just going to ask Dr. Marc, is there a book or a resource that you have found to be helpful for yourself to kind of keep you on track that you would recommend to others? Because I too, like many others, work with people who could continue to use that type of inspiration.
There are some books. If you would give me a little time to think about that. I could get that to Miranda, who might be able to share it with everybody. One of them that comes to mind, I think it's called The Happiness Factor by Sean Acor. And for those, this one has a religious aspect to it, so I don't know if it would be appeal to everybody. And it's not even my particular religion, but I happen to like it anyway. It's The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale, who's written many other books besides that one. And there's others that are really that I do read and do inspire me and help me kind of, in some of those moments. I'd be happy to put a small list together for you.
That'd be great. Thank you very much, and phenomenal overall.
Dr. Mark, this is Kristen Chapman, the Health Sciences Librarian here at Danbury. If you would be able to forward me that list as well, we can go ahead and get those books ordered, not only to have in the Caregiver Center, but also in the medical library itself. We'd be grateful to put them in the library, so we would be able to get them.
Thank you. I will get that done.
I appreciate that, Borenstein.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, I want to thank you all for being here, and Dr. Borenstein, really, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been really an honor to be here. Thank you again, everybody, for your work in the world.
And thank you.
Thank you.